Hey guys, I'm glad you're here. Now, whether you're one of those people who always sets goals at the beginning of a new year, or if it's mid-year and you're just at a point in your life where you'd like to change things up, the fact remains that if you clicked on this video, then you're probably interested in how to set goals. It is somehow already December as I film this, which means it is almost the start of a new year. This of course means that I will be moving into a new planner shortly, and no planner of mine is complete without my yearly goals. Since about 2017, I have included a page in any bullet journal or planner that I use that lists out all the big projects I want to accomplish that year. I also believe, however, and you may have heard me say this before, that change can happen at any point. So I don't restrict myself to goal setting only at the end of one year and the beginning of another. So today I wanted to talk about my system for setting goals, since the rest of this channel is dedicated to habits and processes that help in achieving goals. First of all, I do want to say that this whole process of setting goals for the year is easier if you do have an entire life plan or overarching life goal that you're shooting for. I'm not saying you have to have one of these, but it does make it easier because you can just kind of take your big goal and decide what 1 year's worth of good progress toward that would look like. For everyone who doesn't have the rest of your life planned out, or the next 10 years, or the next 10 minutes, here is how I like to set goals. First of all, I like to set goals for each category of my life. I like to look at my life in categories because looking at all my different activities in kind of chunks by what they are makes me feel less overwhelmed. The categories for each person will of course look different, but my categories tend to map really closely to the categories that I use in my color coding system. And I have an entire video about that already, so I will just link that over here for you guys to check out. Some examples of those categories for me are work, so my full-time job, health and wellness, so going to the gym, going to the doctor, chiropractor, taking care of myself, and this YouTube channel. And of course there are several others, but diving too deeply into how I segment my life probably isn't too useful to you, so I would just say divide your life into the areas that make sense for you. It's a bit vague, but hopefully still helpful. Now for each of these categories, decide what you would like that part of your life to look like 1 year from now, or whatever time period you're setting goals for. But let's keep in mind that we want to set realistic goals. So your ideal vision for this area of your life shouldn't look too far outside of what's actually achievable. For example, let's say I'm looking at my health and wellness category. At my current level of physical fitness, it would definitely not be achievable for my goal to be, in 1 year, I want to be in the best physical shape of my life, to the point where I could film a Marvel superhero movie with no extra work. Because of my personal situation, in which I work full-time, have a bunch of other projects like this YouTube channel that I put a lot of hours into, it's just not realistic for me to say that I would be able to spend the amount of time in the gym that I would need to in order to attain that goal. I have maybe an hour a day where I can work out at the maximum. A more attainable ideal vision for me in this area of my life would be to say that I want to be in great shape physically, feeling strong, and enjoying the movement that I build into my day. That's a much more attainable state. Step 3 is to then take that goal and break it down into different sub-goals. In this part, we take that big ideal vision and break it down into chunks that are more manageable. Let's continue taking this health and wellness goal. If I want to feel very strong and fit physically, that means that I have to build in time into my schedule to exercise fairly frequently. I'll also want to try new activities and new ways of exercising, so I don't just get bored doing the same thing over and over and then give up. And trying new things like this will help with that enjoying movement bit of the ideal state I was talking about earlier. Another thing that would help with both the increased strength part of the goal as well as enjoying movement would be to really work on my flexibility. I do have a pretty good stretching habit built into my routines already, and I talk about that more in my recent video on routines, which I'll link here for you. But I do know that there's a lot more progress I could make in terms of flexibility. So let's call these my sub-goals. Exercising fairly frequently, finding new activities and ways of exercising, and working on my flexibility. Next, we want to take each of these pretty general sub-goals and turn them into distinct, actionable targets. Let's do that for each of the sub-goals from our example. First of all, exercise pretty frequently. If we just left this statement as is, it can be really hard to tell if we're actually achieving this goal. Also, pretty frequently means different things to different people. For me personally, Pretty frequently means 3 to 4 times a week. This number is realistic but still challenging, so that means that it's a good target. 3 to 4 times a week times 52 weeks means that I'm going to be aiming for about 180 exercise days throughout the year of 2022. So that is my yearly target for this sub-goal. Next up, let's look at try new activities and ways of exercising. Now, this one is a little bit harder to assign a numerical target to, but for things like these, I like to give myself a couple ideas so that I have kind of a starting point. One fun activity that I really started getting into last year was indoor rock climbing. My husband and I used to live right next to an indoor climbing gym, so we used to go all the time and we really liked it. We have since moved and tightened the strings on our budget, but this is something that I would really like to get back into this year. So for this one, I'm gonna say that my goal is to be able to pretty confidently do a certain degree of difficulty of these climbs. For bouldering, I'd like to be able to flash or at least finish V2s. And for top rope, I'd like to get to the point where I can pretty well bust out a 5'11 or 5'12. Those terms aren't strictly necessary if you're not setting these goals for yourself, but I like to be really concrete about what I'm trying to achieve. Another thing I would like to do is get better and more confident in doing plyometric exercises, which tend to focus on a lot of movement in a short amount of time to increase power. This for me would mean that I would have to improve my balance, up my core strength, and focus on whole body movements in a way that I kind of haven't been doing yet. One thing that I would like to do that kind of falls under this umbrella of plyometric exercises is body weight pull-ups. I have not been able to do these since I was a kid in gymnastics, and I would really like to get back to the point where I can do them confidently. So that is my target for this sub-goal, to be able to confidently and easily do several body weight pull-ups with no assistance. Next, let's look at work on flexibility. So I'm sure you know what I'm gonna say for this one, but I also haven't been able to do the splits since I was a kid in gymnastics class, and I would really like to be able to do those again too. Plus, if we ever get back to like normal social interactions, it might be a fun party trick. So that will be my target for this sub-goal, to be able to do the splits. Now, our last step here is also an optional one, which is to break down your yearly goals into smaller targets or actions. As I said, this is totally optional, as are all of these steps really, but I sometimes find it helpful to break down these targets into even smaller chunks so they're easily achievable. For example, I've said that I want to exercise 180 days in 2022. But unless I keep some sort of running tally every time I go for a run or go to the gym, I won't really know if I'm on track to make that goal. So for goals like these, I like to keep that 3 to 4 times a week target in mind, but I also like to look at it on a monthly level. 180 exercise days across the year means about 15 workouts per month. And I don't know about you, but it's much easier for me to keep that 15 number in mind when I'm planning monthly, instead of trying to tally across months and see if I'm on track or not in that way. You can do what I do and just check the activity log on your digital fitness tracker, or maybe your gym has a log of every time that you sign in and you can get them to print you out a copy for your own records. For yearly goals that aren't as numbers-based and maybe a little bit harder to track, there's a couple ways you can go about measuring your progress. First, set yourself mini goals to use like trail markers along the way. For example, if your goal is to be able to run a marathon, then being able to run 5 miles at a stretch is roughly 20% of the way toward your goal. If your goal is to eat more vegetables, then you can choose a new vegetable each week and base most of your meals, or all if you're really ambitious, around that new vegetable. You'll definitely be eating more. You can also build progress into your habits and routines. Look at it this way. If you spend a couple hours per week working on learning a new skill, there's pretty much no way that at the end of the year you won't be much better than when you started off. If you practice a new language for 20 minutes each day, real deliberate practice, you will be much closer to fluency at year's end. So use the knowledge from books like Tiny Habits or Atomic Habits to figure out how to work this into your everyday, or at least so that you're doing it several hours a week. I also have a couple videos on my routines and stuff, so I will link that here and in the description for you for more inspiration. So by the end of all these steps, you will know what your ideal vision looks like for each distinct category of your life. You'll have broken down that vision into different sub-goals and then assigned a concrete target for each sub-goal. Finally, you've broken those down even further and built habits that ensure you're making progress toward your yearly goals every day. Let me know if you guys want more examples or have any questions. I love talking to you in the comments, so please feel free to reach out. And as always, like if you liked this video, subscribe if you loved it and want to see more like it, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.